This episode is sponsored by Incogni. Listen, guys, I don't know about you, but I get real tired of managing the spam and cold outreach to my contact info. Those annoying emails, phone calls from unknown numbers, wasting our time and valuable attention. Not to mention the bad stuff from data breaches, which are rising every year. To top it off, data brokers out there harvest our information and sell it to people who intend to spam you and scam you. So what do we do about it? Well, I use Incogni. I signed up to use the platform, and within 30 minutes, hundreds of requests have been sent and completed, removing my data from the public view. Incogni tracks down and removes your personal data from online directories, people search sites, and commercial databases. The process is fully automated for the hundreds of known data brokers who sell our data without consent. Got a site that they don't auto-hit? No problem. There's a custom removal feature to take down almost everything that is exposed online. So take it from me and take back your personal data with Incogni. Go to incogni.com/codestory and use code CODESTORY at checkout to get 60% off annual plans. You can also find the link in the episode description. That's incogni.com/codestory, because they can't harm you if they can't find you. This episode is sponsored by NordProtect. In a world where data breaches are on the rise and identity theft is becoming more common, you have to take steps to protect yourself. NordProtect offers you everything you need to keep your identity safe, all in one easy place. It's built to help you safeguard your identity with advanced automation that works 24/7 on your behalf. Things like dark web monitoring, credit monitoring, security alerts, and more. And if the worst should occur, the platform walks alongside you for identity restoration. NordProtect plans come with financial coverage across a wide range of threats, from identity theft to online fraud and scams, so you are covered when it matters most. Get an exclusive 5% discount on NordProtect plans. Go to nordprotect.com/codestory and use the code CODESTORY at checkout. You can also find the link in the episode notes. That's nordprotect.com/codestory.
It was tough. It was really tough because you're always trying to balance time constraints with feature richness as well, right? So we're trying to identify or put together what we believe is the minimum viable product to take to market. And so we needed to scope it and slice it as such. We wanted to get customer feedback as soon as possible on what we'd built and really validate the opportunity for the company as well. So we then sliced it quite heavily and made some pretty big decisions around what was going to go into that MVP. They were based on what is the highest percentage of use cases that our customers want to use this for. My name is Lucas Lovell, and I am VP of Product at Paddle.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Spent 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing on the back end.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to do
took
next.
many goes to get right.
Who built the teams that have their
A
back.
company is its people.
The teams help each other achieve
Most
more.
proud of our team.
Keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was
Yes, we've been fighting it as we grow.
total waste of time.
The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind
Took it
you.
off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
To ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really want
It's
it.
not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story.
I'm your host, Noah Labhart, and today how Lucas Lovell is leading the charge around end-to-end payments by centering the solution around being the merchant of record. Lucas Lovell grew up in Adelaide, Australia, before eventually landing where he resides now, in London. He studied law, but he eventually decided that he didn't want to become a lawyer. During his time in law school, he and his crew built an app, and ever since then, he was hooked on the wild ride that tech is. Prior to London, he spent 4 years in Paris and indeed loves to travel. He also enjoys skiing, and when asked about snowboarding, he said he'd tried, but eventually reverted back. 4.5 years ago, Lucas joined a company solving end-to-end payments while being the merchant of record. What was missing from the platform was some functionality around invoicing, which started him on his journey of product creation at the company. This is Lucas' creation story at Paddle.
Paddle is an end-to-end billing and payments platform that operates under a merchant of record model. So software companies all around the world use Paddle to power their payments and capture revenue globally. But the unique proposition that Paddle offers is the fact that we operate as a merchant. And what this means is that we are technically reselling your product and taking on liability for the transaction. And that enables us to handle all of the tax compliance, everything around calculating tax, filing tax and remitting tax globally, everything around subscription renewal compliance, and everything around fraud as well. So the primary advantage being that your payments platform or your payments and billing infrastructure is playing a more sophisticated role in terms of taking all of that operational burden off of your shoulders as a software company so you can go and sell around the world without worrying about any of that stuff. So inside that all-in-one offering, there are a number of things. There is an end-to-end sort of subscription billing product. We do all the payments. We have payment methods. We provide the checkout experience. We do all of the tax, compliance, and fraud. And all of that is rolled into one product, single integration, and you can go and sell around the world with ease. Paddle supports just over 4,000 customers now globally. We're a company of about 300 folks, headquartered in London, where I am based. But we also have a couple of other hubs across Europe and then a pretty decent showing in the US as well. Company was founded about 12 years ago. I've been in the business for 4.5 years, and it's been a pretty fun ride. It was a much smaller company when I joined. Since then, we've been through $200 million Series D capital raise, acquired a company called Profitwell, which was a really interesting experience. And yeah, probably grown the company 3 or 4-fold in that period. So it's been a great journey. I love the company. It's a great place, and we have a great set of customers around the world as well.
Let's dive into what you would consider your MVP. So when you joined the company, right, what was that first project you worked on, or that first task that you took on? You led the project. Tell me about that and how long it took you to execute and what sort of tools you're using to bring it to life.
When I joined the company, Paddle was a payments platform that primarily powered self-serve billing motions. And what I mean by that is companies that were deploying a product-led growth strategy where customers or users were self-serving onto their product through a checkout experience. So SaaS companies or software companies that have a relatively low price point that you can self-serve onto. Think all the classics like Slack, Miro, Dropbox, all these sorts of companies that you just go to the website, you hit get started and you're on your way. And that is today still Paddle's bread and butter, right? That's where we shine. When I joined the company about 4.5 years ago, there was a big strategic objective to go up market and a realization that in order to go up market, we needed to be able to support more sophisticated billing motions. Because as companies typically grow, they start to mix product-led growth with sales-led growth. They start to sell much bigger enterprise contracts as a revenue multiplier on top of their product-led growth motions. And so we needed an invoicing tool, right? We needed a way for a Paddle customer to come into the product and send an invoice to the tune of $150,000 for an enterprise contract. And then we wanted to do that within Paddle so that they didn't have to go and use another tool and create these two separate systems that were capturing revenue in different ways. So the first product that I worked on when I joined the company was to build out the first version of Paddle's invoicing tool, which was a pretty big strategic objective. As I said, a really exciting project. The product is still a pretty core part of Paddle's stack today, but at that point, we didn't have an invoicing tool. In terms of the set of tools that we used, from a technical standpoint, it was one of the first things that we built in more of a microservices architecture where we spun it off as a separate thing. So it wasn't built on top of our monolith. So that was a technical decision. That was more of an engineering-led decision that we made pretty early on. And now the platform is much more reflective of that structure. But in terms of actually spinning up the initial version of the product, we use lots of other tools like Miro and Excalidraw to put together system design and think about customer journey mapping and problem mapping and opportunity identification. We did lots and lots of discovery, and we populated lots of boards in Miro with product discovery work and customer feedback. I was a big user of a tool called Gong that I'm sure you're familiar with. It's a sales intelligence tool. So I could get all that feedback from customers in the past. So it wasn't just relying on myself going out and speaking to customers when I arrived, but also able to see how customers had spoken about us potentially solving this problem in the past as well. So there were a range of tools that sort of came together and formed that gave us all of the necessary equipment to be able to put together what the first version of this looked like. And then we went from there, really.
So in building that first version, you got to make certain decisions and trade-offs around how you approach the problem, how you limit features, which is, your bread and butter in product management, right? Tell me about some of those decisions you had to make and how you and the team coped with the decision.
It was tough. It was really tough because you're always trying to balance time constraints with feature richness as well, right? So we're trying to identify or put together what we believe is the minimum viable product to take to market. And so we needed to scope it and slice it as such. We wanted to get customer feedback as soon as possible on what we'd built and really validate the opportunity for the company as well. So we then sliced it quite heavily and made some pretty big decisions around what was going to go into that MVP. And they were based on a few things. They were based on what is the highest percentage of use cases that our customers want to use this for, and making sure that we're not building for 20 different use cases or 20 different types of invoicing models, but rather focusing on if we had to solve one use case in invoicing, what would that use case be? So an example of that was we didn't build in recurring invoice capability. We left the subscription piece out at the first slice, which meant that our customers had to do a little bit of manual work if they were sending recurring invoices. But we thought that was an acceptable or palatable trade-off to make. It was all about thinking through what are the primary use cases, what does the minimum viable product look like, and how can we slice up the different iterations of this accordingly.
From that point, right, you kicked it off. Say you've built the MVP of this, this version of the product. You are getting some traction. You're happy with it, right? How did you mature it? How did you progress it from that point? And I think that wrapped it in a box a little bit, and kind of as it applies to this invoicing project, and it also applies to the company. How do you go about building your roadmap? How do you decide what is the next most important thing to build or to address with Paddle?
We were very customer-led in our prioritization. We really believed and still believe in keeping the customer central to that decision-making. So we had a thesis on what the next iterations of the product would look like and what the next versions would incorporate from a feature perspective, but we very much focused on being led by the customer. And our target customer was a hybrid customer who was doing both PLG and SLG. And so we made sure that we weren't building an invoicing tool for a company that wasn't going to be using Paddle for their checkout volume either. It was very much, how do we build an invoicing tool that can really help these hybrid companies? And again, it was all about identifying those particular use cases and expanding the product from there to be able to handle and incorporate more use cases and more billing models as it pertains to invoicing. And I think this was 4 years ago, so the company was much smaller, and I think the product org at that point was less mature than what it is today. And the surface area that we cover now as a product team is much bigger than what it was back then. So the prioritization decision becomes really hard. But here's a rough framework for how we think about priority from a roadmap perspective. When we think about priority, we encourage our product managers to think about the impact that they're going to have on the business. And when they think about the work they're doing, it's also the impact they're going to have on the customer. But we have multiple customers, right? And we think about it like this. So there are 5 ways that we move the needle for the business, right? Put very simply. The first one is acquisition. We help drive net new business. So we help acquire customers that aren't currently on Paddle. And a good example of product roadmap work that contributes to that is expanding your billing model capability. Invoicing is a great example of that, right? Where we help the business acquire customers that previously could not use Paddle because we didn't have the functionality required for them to achieve their use case inside of Paddle. The second one is monetization. So is this thing or is thing X helping us monetize our installed base better? So are we making more money from existing customers? The third is retention. Does this thing help reduce churn in the installed base? The fourth is cost, which is a really important concept as a payments platform. Does this help reduce Paddle's cost base? So it's very much turning to more of an internal customer. Does building this thing give us gross margin efficiency gains? And the fifth is risk, right? So are we taking risk out of the business by building this thing? And again, as a merchant of record, because we do lots of compliance work, a lot of the things that appear on our roadmap are about being compliant with new laws and new regulations. And if we're not compliant, we're introducing risk into the product or into the company. It's very much like acquisition, monetization, retention, cost, and risk as the 5 ways in which our product team helps Paddle move forward as a business. And then what we try and do from a prioritization standpoint, because we know that all of these things look very different, right? Building something for your customers to win new business is very different from building something because the German government have introduced a new law about subscription renewal reminders. Both of those things look very different. We try and quantify the impact. So what we do is we sit there and we go, hey, like what data have we got? Or what data do we need to give us a sort of directional steer on what impact this is going to have on the business? And then that sort of helps us shift different projects around to make sure that we're maximizing impact on the business as much as possible. So we use that business impact articulation as a core part of the prioritization framework to help us not only convince ourselves, but also do the necessary stakeholder engagement around the company to give everyone else confidence that the product and engineering team is indeed maximizing impact to the business through really strong and robust prioritization.
I'm curious about team, right? How do you go about building your team, and how does the company go about building the entire team? And I'm curious if there's differences, and I'm curious about what you look for in those people to indicate that they are the winning horses to join you.
Our product and engineering team is about 100 folks now. We have then the product teams, and then we have the platform teams. And the platform teams, their responsibility is keeping the lights on. And our product teams contribute to that as well, but primarily you have your SRE teams and your AppX teams. And their responsibility is reliability and scalability of the product, as well as making our product teams more efficient in how they go about building products. And we have a pretty meaty group in that department. It's highly critical. Like the thing about working in fintech and payments is that we are a critical piece of infrastructure for our customers. We need to make sure we're minimizing downtime, maintaining pretty high SLO standards, etc. So that's a big part of how we think about that. So we think about those teams as like service reliability, as well as a bit of developer efficiency in there as well. And then our product engineering groups, we've adopted a domain structure. So when you think about the surface area of the product, we've divided the product into three core groups or core domains. And each of those core domains owns particular services within the product and owns a roadmap. And you have a product and engineering leadership team that sit above that and own product strategy. And then sort of product strategy informs group level strategy, which informs roadmap. And then all the way back up as well. So it's bi-directional. So the things that our PMs and engineers are seeing on the ground and how they're looking at customers who are interacting with our product also feeds back up the chain to inform product strategy as well. And then in terms of the type of people that we're looking for, there are a few things that are really important to us. The first one is high agency and high accountability. So we love folks who have an ownership mentality and who bring that to work every day. I think it's a very important skill as a PM, and we particularly hire for that trait especially. The second one is we look for customer centricity. So we look for empathetic people who are very comfortable exposing themselves to how other people feel about things. And that's both internally across the business, but also with our customers, and folks who are comfortable stepping into their shoes, getting in front of customers and really learning and sitting side by side with customers to understand and build empathy for the problems they're experiencing. And then we also look for people who are relatively data centric as well. Comfortable fetching their own data, who are comfortable working in a world where there is lots of data and you have to be able to cut through the noise and think about what is the most pragmatic use of data. And I think those three pillars have been a really strong basis for how we think about product management at Paddle. So high agency, ownership mentality people who are customer centric and data centric. The other thing that probably wraps all around that is communication. Communication in an org like Paddle is super important. Why it's especially important at a company like Paddle is because payments is inherently complex. Like the technology under the hood of a payments company is fundamentally complex. And we really look for people who are able to take complex concepts and articulate them very clearly, both to customers, to internal stakeholders, to their peers. We think that communication and your ability to be pithy and succinct in communication is really important as well. So there are a few examples of some things that we look for when we're identifying people to join the team.
So I'm curious about scalability. Has there been interesting areas where Paddle has had to fight scalability as it's grown?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially early days when the transactional volume through the product was increasing rapidly. Again, I wasn't probably here for that initial growth, but based on what others in the business tell me, there were definitely moments there where we had to think about technical and platform scalability pretty deeply. We also went through a replatforming exercise 2.5 years ago now. So we effectively rebuilt the billing component of the platform, which was a massive task. something that has delivered us a lot of really positive success since, but a massive task nonetheless. And effectively having a system that was in some ways, we had to go through that journey again of being able to level up the scalability of the infrastructure and get comfortable with a lot more load than what we were beforehand was a pretty interesting project as well. So like scalability from a technical standpoint, yeah, as a payments company, lots of examples where we've had to encounter that before, but like we're pretty good now. Like I think we're pretty mature and robust from a scalability perspective as it pertains to technology and systems.
As you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built with your time at Paddle, what are you most proud of?
Probably the re-platform, to be honest. We have Paddle Classic and Paddle Billing, and Paddle Classic is the old monolithic product, and Paddle Billing is the more modern product that was quite a grueling project, to be honest. It took a lot of people, probably 12 to 18 months to actually get through a rebuild of all the core billing components and how all those pieces fit together. I think the thing that I'm proud of is A, the people and how they got through that process. And I think a lot of really good thinking went into it. Like we didn't just rebuild Paddle, we redesigned Paddle for the modern software company. And my thesis at the start was, A, we can unlock a lot of potential value through added functionality on top of the new product that we felt we were constrained by on the old product. Secondly, product velocity should go up, right? Because we're building on top of much more modern infrastructure. And I think both of those things have turned out to be true. It's not a sexy, flashy feature, unfortunately. I think most people would probably share something super sexy or some wild experiment or bold move that went really well. But for me, I think going through the re-platforming project was a big learning opportunity, especially for someone like me, because I didn't come from a technical background. As I said at the start, I came from a law background, at least at university. My career in tech and in product management has been very much a learning on the job with respect to engineering and the technical side and system design and architecture and that sort of stuff. I built a lot of respect for our engineering team and also a lot of empathy for the sorts of problems that they encounter by going through that project. And yeah, I think that's definitely the sort of proudest one that I've done here at Paddle.
Let's flip the script a little bit. I'm curious, tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
We made the mistake of not seeing the project through enough and eventually probably letting some of the additional iterations and slices that we had planned slip a little bit. I think we lost some focus and we probably redirected resource to other areas of the product a little bit too soon. And for that reason, I think we left that product in what I would call an MVP state for too long. And that caused a bunch of customer friction and a bunch of misalignment around strategic objectives and our ability to achieve them. So I think that in hindsight was a bit of a mistake. I think we treated it as an experiment for too long and didn't mature that product quickly enough. I think sometimes as well in a leadership role, like I can point to a lot of mistakes where we've created a lack of focus through pushing too many strategic priorities on the teams. And I think one thing I reflect on as a leader a lot is about how can I help. I'm reading this book at the moment actually called The One Thing. You might have read it. I think it's quite a popular business book, but it's all about how great companies are built sequentially. So one focus at a time, broadly. But I think I definitely reflect on instances where we probably fell into the trap of being a meter wide and an inch deep, where we should have been deeper on fewer things. So yeah, that's not pointing to one mistake per se, but a bit of a reflection on perhaps a series of mistakes that I made as a leader.
So let's move forward then. What does the future look like for Paddle, for the products, and for your team?
Who knows what the future looks like, right? I think technology's taken a giant leap forward in the last 12 months or so, hasn't it? With all of this AI stuff. And I think it's going to be a pretty interesting few years ahead of us. Payments is always perceived. It's perceived by most people as a back office requirement, right? It's very much perceived as something that helps you operate your company or enables you to operate your company, insofar as you can capture sales globally by using a payments product. And I think for us, like the transition we're making is from thinking about Paddle as an operational partner to our customers to thinking about Paddle as a growth partner to our customers. Payments is in many ways an invisible growth layer. There are a lot of levers that you can pull inside of a payments platform that can add percentage points to growth rates. Think about checkout conversion, think about payment acceptance, think about pricing localization, think about offering local payment methods to drive conversion rates, think about experimentation around pricing and packaging. All of these things exist inside of a payments platform, but most people don't use all of those levers in the way that they potentially could to maximize outcomes for their company. And so I think the future for Paddle is about how do we turn payments into a growth lever? How can Paddle's product fundamentally surface growth opportunities for our customers by incorporating more complex machine learning and AI sort of stuff into the product where it makes sense to really drive customer value and help our customers grow, improving capabilities around A/B testing, dynamic pricing, this sort of stuff that I think is really exciting. So I think we're going to see a step change in what the expectations are of a table stakes payments platform. And I think Paddle as a company in product, we're really thinking about how we can unlock the product as a growth lever and really surface a lot more of that tooling that exists inside of the payments platform to help our customers grow. So I think that's the direction we're taking the product, and I think I'm pretty excited about it.
Okay, so let's switch to you, Lucas. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person or many persons or something you look up to and why.
I think my very original interest in business actually came from reading one of Richard Branson's early books, which is he's not really a tech entrepreneur in the classic world of technology, but I think his books were really the initial inspiration for me when I was early days, late teenage years, early 20s, thinking about going into sort of the technology and business world. I think I really admired sort of his charisma and I think authenticity as a leader as well. I think that really shone through in everything he did. And then more recently, as I've looked for more sort of inspiration from domain expertise in what I do, I've typically sought inspiration and learning from more of the sort of successful product leaders in the world and tech leaders in the world. I've really enjoyed and been informed by books like Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. And I've really enjoyed a lot of Marty Kagan's work as well, the Inspired book series. I think some of the thought leadership that he's provided around product management and product leadership is good. I think also other people in tech, but also the people who I've worked with at Paddle, right? So I was lucky enough to join Paddle when it was still founder-led. So Paddle was led by Harrison Rose and Christian Owens, who were the two founders of Paddle. And then Harrison left quite soon after I joined, maybe a year or two after I joined, and Christian maybe 3 years after I joined. Those two people have been great to me and really supported my growth inside the business. And they're two people that I continue to interact with a lot and learn from. And then also the current leadership, our current CEO, Jimmy, is a very seasoned tech executive who worked at ServiceNow for a long time, as well as the current CPO of Paddle, Stu Bailey, who was CPO at Currency Cloud that got sold to Visa. I'm not someone who reads every book from every thought leader out there. I tend to gain inspiration from people that are more proximate to me and who I'm interacting with more day to day. But there are definitely a few sources of inspiration from some of those sort of seasoned and more well-known business leaders as well.
Okay, Lucas, last question. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, being the product guru that you are and the leader at Paddle?
I'm imagining them probably being some sort of business leader in the AI world. And the one thing I would probably say is AI is a technology and it's a tool. It's not a product. And I think the most successful AI companies will still start by solving deep customer problems and using AI in a way that solves customer problems. So I think that's probably the one thing I would say is make sure you're thinking about customer problems and not getting carried away by the wave of AI and falling into the trap of thinking about the technology as the product. The technology is the tool that enables you to generate customer outcomes. And I think tech companies that still keep that customer centricity in their DNA are the ones who are ultimately going to be really successful. So I think in my capacity as a product leader, that's probably the reminder I'd give.
I think that's a fantastic reminder and couldn't agree more. Well, Lucas, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling your creation story at Paddle.
Thanks very much, Noah. It was great to talk to you.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.